facility, and that was a good example of where we were able to do that. So I would just say that, and this was a quote, this is proof that the system is working, that we're able to identify what the president said are embers and put them out. It's the system at work. Yeah. About is we have a phase plan to reopen, and you can follow those guidelines, and the restaurants are in phases, and the entertainment facilities, you noted, are in phases as accordance with declining cases. But as a whole, with the totality of the circumstances, when you have a society that's shut down and people are locked in their homes and they're isolated, it leads to the very suicide line increase calls that I noted. It leads to drug abuse. There are consequences to eternally staying shut down, which is why you have to find the balance, which the president does in consultation with expert advice from Dr. Fauci and Dr. Birx and the task force, and he makes the best decision for America going forward. He made the right decision to shut down the country at the time he did, because there were 2.2 million lives at stake, and a lot of American lives were saved because of that decision. But at the same time, it's a balance, which is why we put out the phased guidelines to reopening. Well, the president made clear he was talking about testing. The fact that we can say we're doing double that of any other country, the fact that we can put up that graph that shows South Korea as a small little red bar of testing per capita, and every bar beside it is an American state or territory outdoing what South Korea has done. And let's note that South Korea was the gold standard for testing. In fact, on March 13th, the Washington Post headline was, "South Korea is doing 10,000 coronavirus tests a day. The U.S. is struggling for even a small fraction of that." And here we are on May 11th with a Washington Post headline, "The administration keeps bragging that the U.S. testing now is better than South Korea's was a month ago." So you can't demand that we reach South Korea and then say that we're bragging when we do. This is a moment where the American private sector succeeded. This administration mobilized that testing. Every state is better off than South Korea at this moment. And that is a very good thing and something to be celebrated, because it's American innovation at its best with 92 emergency use authorizations. And it's this administration under President Trump working. The president believes in the phase guidelines to reopening, which Dr. Fauci signed off on along with Dr. Birx, and we encourage every state and governor to follow. Yeah. I was actually in the Oval Office when that discussion transpired, and the governor of Florida, Governor DeSantis, who's doing a phenomenal job, talked about that there was over testing ability at these sites, so there were extra tests. There wasn't enough demand. There weren't people showing up to use them all. He said that that had happened around some sites in the state. He saw it firsthand. He's the governor of Florida, and that's a good thing, and we're able to fulfill Governor DeSantis's plan in full that he has laid out as necessary to reopening the state of Florida, which happens to be my great home state. Looking at the data, as I noted to you, Admiral Joie has a chart of every single governor's plan and has said we will fulfill every single governor's plan. Governor DeSantis was reporting what he had seen at distinct facilities or drive-through testing sites. Announcements on that front today. Yep. Matter. So I don't have any updates on that front because that's currently a DOJ matter, but you did refer to transcripts, and I do think it's an important moment to talk about what was in some of the transcripts that were released prior to today, so not the specific ones that you're asking about. But we learned from newly released transcripts a few things. We learned that what some Obama officials were saying publicly was much different than what they were saying privately. James Clapper was out there saying that he had evidence that this was worse than Watergate, when in fact a few weeks later he was saying privately, "I never saw any direct empirical evidence that the Trump campaign or someone in it was plotting or conspiring with Russia." Samantha Power said, "I am not in possession of anything. I am not in possession and didn't read or absorb any information that came out of the intelligence community suggesting collusion." Ambassador Rice, "I don't recall intelligence or evidence to that effect." Former Attorney General Loretta Lynch, "I can't say that if it existed or not. I don't recall that being briefed up to me." So it brings the question to light. Why then did we have many years of investigating collusion that these Obama administration officials never existed, they never saw any evidence of, but for 3 years the American people were dragged through the mud and told that their choice for the President of the United States might have been a Russian asset based on no evidence at all. This president was exonerated by the Mueller report, and there are some real questions for these individuals who are saying one thing publicly and another thing privately. Thank you so much. I think I got to all of you, and we'll be back soon.